Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
All right, Brewer fans, welcome to another Brew Crew Review Podcast. I'm Craig, and joining me is my co-host Vince Travato. How are you doing, Vince?
I'm doing great, Craig. How was your Happy New Year, I should say?
Oh, yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah, good.
Any complaints?
We got Chatter Scotty on here. Wish him a Happy New Year.
I don't believe that they've been able to chime in today.
Dude, okay.
But yeah, so and that is unfortunate because I know one of Scott's personal favorite brewers in the last 5 years or so is back with the team. And that is left-handed pitcher, veteran Wade Miley has signed.
Yeah.
And also for all of you guys keeping score, the Brewers have finally been the last MLB team to sign a major league free agent. And of course, everyone had on their scorecard that the Brewers would be signing as their first major league free agent this offseason, of course, Wade Miley. So
I know that you're thrilled, Craig. He was one of your favorites back on that 2018 squad. The Brewers obviously had a very good year, and Miley was one of the key components in that rotation in 2018. So maybe it'll augur well for the Brewers and their postseason hopes here in 2023 as well.
Well, yeah, the 2018 season, I will give Wade Miley credit for exceeding my expectations and his pitching above his talent level for sure. And I don't know, we might as well just, the 2018 Brewers were a pretty good team, and we went all the way to the National League Championship Series, Game 7. So we might as well bring them all back. I mean, come on, bring back Julio Chacin. We can bring back the mayor of Ding Dong City. I think these guys are all available. Yeah, why not just bring the band back together and give it a go for the 2023 season? Sure, why not?
We already tried that with Shaw, just so you're aware.
Well, bring him back a third time. I'm sure he's still at least committee member, if not the mayor of Ding Dong City.
Still a citizen, yeah. Well, I will say this, Craig. I know that Miley's advanced in the years. I guess that I will say this move surprised me a little bit, but it does add a little bit of rotation depth. And when healthy, his numbers have still not been awful the past 4 seasons since leaving Milwaukee. He's been with the Astros and the Reds and the Cubs, so there is that. He does find a way to miss bats. I mean, he's not going to overpower you, and he never has been that type of pitcher, but he is a guy that can miss bats.
Yeah. And now, there are a lot of free agents out there, and even former Brewer starters I wouldn't have mind signing, including multiple Zachs, like Zach Greinke and Zach Davies. There weren't too many Wades out there that. What's that?
Brett Anderson is still available.
Yeah, definitely available to any organized baseball team, possibly your local softball team. He's definitely available. So I'm not sure if Matt Arnold has a real awesome plan for the 2023 Brewers, but we shall see. So I guess before we really, obviously it was a cheap enough signing. I think $4.5 million for the 1-year contract for Miley. Gives us some veteran rotation depth, which we did need. I guess as a Brewer fan, you're thinking who gets left out of the rotation right now, because we really have 6 legitimate starters right now. And, I think the question is, do we go with a 6-man rotation? Or obviously it's always good to have a lot of rotation depth for injuries and what have you. But at the top of rotation, we've got Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, Freddie Peralta as our 3 kind of aces, so to speak. And then we were following that up with Eric Lauer, who's also pitched in a very almost all-star level last year. And then you've got Aaron Ashby, who has struggled in his first full year in the major leagues last year, but I think has a bright future in the rotation as well. And then you had another lefty in Wade Miley at that. So those 3 aces are all right-handers. And then the 3 lefties toward the back rotation. You got a veteran in Miley. You've got kind of a greenhorn and Aaron Ashby, who's possibly ready to break out, and of course Eric Lauer has become a solid young pitcher himself. So it's pretty nice depth. I guess as a Brewer fan, this signing kind of signaled, hey, does this mean that maybe we'll trade someone for a hitter? Perhaps we're negotiating with both behind the scenes with both Woodruff and Burns, who will be free agents at the end of the 2024 season, on maybe a long-term contract extension with the Brewers, and maybe the one of those two that aren't willing to sign that, maybe we're looking to trade, or perhaps someone like Eric Lauer, who I think his value is really on the upswing after last year. Maybe he could be part of a big trade to bring in a big bat, which I think we still need for this lineup. Or perhaps not. Perhaps we're just going with more rotation depth. I guess, what is your take on this move, Vince?
Yeah, I think you summed up the options pretty well, which means it's probably going to be none of the above. But knowing the way that this front office
Wade Miley will
operates,
be the new Josh Hader and our new left-handed closer, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. He'll probably actually start at second base. But my initial thought is that this does give the Brewers the depth that they could use to go out and maybe acquire a bat. And I don't think that we're going to see Burns or Woodruff traded before opening day this season, but I do think that it's increasingly likely that we'll see one of Eric Lauer or Adrian Hauser traded before opening day in exchange for a bat. I tend to think that, maybe the Brewers got a bit frustrated by not being able to easily acquire another bat via free agency this offseason. And as the offseason has unfolded, it seems increasingly unlikely that we're going to acquire someone via free agency, and the options available, quite frankly, are not that good anymore. So my guess is that this gives us some possible trading depth that we can use to go out and acquire a bat that we couldn't get via free agency.
Yeah, and it's a good thing you mentioned Adrian Hauser. I didn't mean to forget him. He did put in a number of starts for us last year, and even 2 years ago, really started to show some promise as at least, if nothing else, a back-end starter. He did pitch quite a bit out of the bullpen last year, and I think that maybe the Brewers have him earmarked for that type of role, or maybe a swingman type role. But that's another person, like you said, that could be attractive for other teams as far as trade bait, or just more additional rotation depth for the Brewers. And then also another move made since our last podcast, the Brewers acquired from the Pittsburgh Pirates former Braves prospect, right-handed pitcher Bryce Wilson, who I guess would also he had a really nice minor league track record, really profiled as a nice, number 4 or 5 starter. However, he really has not done well at all at the major league level at this point. So I guess a change of scenery was in the cards for him, and here he comes to the Milwaukee Brewers. So hopefully he can be some nice depth at the AAA level, and possibly, shine if given the opportunity. But what are your thoughts on that acquisition?
I didn't think too much about it, to be honest. It was one of those moves that I think that, it can kind of restack some depth. Maybe a change of scenery could be good for him. Hadn't really put him high on my potential pitchers to acquire list this offseason. So I can't say I was terribly excited about the move, but I guess, when you're giving up nothing, you might as well take a flyer on some of these guys. So not totally opposed either, just to kind of fill out some depth with different types of arms in both the rotation and the bullpen.
And speaking of more right-handed young rotation depth with some minor league options, I also forgot to throw in this mix that Jansen Junk, the player acquired from the Angels this offseason, also is someone in the Hunter Renfroe trade, is someone who also probably, just like Bryce Wilson, could probably be stashed at AAA, and if he has a nice year there, could fix into our future rotation plans. And you also, of course, have probably AAA for most of this year as left-hand pitcher Robert Gasser, who was acquired as a major piece, in my opinion, in the Josh Hader trade with the Padres last year. So really, all things told, just those pitchers are 9 pitchers that give us some really, really deep rotation depth. Not is it quality though? I mean, outside of the top 3, our top 3
Right.
aces, our top 3 aces are decent 3 lefties, and then those guys at AAA. It gives us I think not some nice depth, but whether or not it's quality, I guess, is called into question for the most part.
Craig, don't forget too that Ethan Small is still out there as a potential name to talk about. I know that he ended up struggling last year in AAA, but his pedigree prior to that was quite high. I remember that we on this show were very excited when he made his big league debut in Milwaukee last year. He got a couple starts for the Brewers in 2022, but I wouldn't say that he's done or anything at this point. I think that there still is plenty there to at least keep an eye on.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned him. He definitely is a factor in our plans, probably more so than Junk or Wilson actually. And as a left-handed pitcher, he did make his major league debut. I think it was at Wrigley last year for the Brewers against the Cubs. I know a good friend of mine who lives in Chicago actually attended that. I think it was the first or second game of the doubleheader against the Cubs.
It was on Memorial Day. Yeah, Memorial Day doubleheader.
Yeah, so he didn't fare too well in that one, but or really in his first in the big leagues. But again, you gotta give these young guys a pass. And of course, when you're talking about young left-handed pitchers, those guys take a little bit more time to develop than the right-handers. So Ethan Small is something definitely I think he's got a future in the major leagues, hopefully for the Brewers. But also, I would put him right toward the top of our list of prospects that the Brewers may be and possibly should be willing to part with in any type of trade package for major league roster upgrades at this point. So very interesting. But I guess overall, so that's 10 names of guys that really are on the cusp of helping either major league experience or on the cusp of helping in the major leagues, I think. So that's some really nice, that's always a great thing to have for a franchise. Yeah. As you know, one guy we didn't even mention on the list is Jason Alexander, who threw way more innings than anything the Brewer fan would have liked to see last year.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Craig, is that I don't think it's just, hey, we've now got the depth to make a trade, or we've got the depth. I think that it's probably a combination of both. We know that this front office likes to be flexible and likes to have some versatility. Might have some of those guys slot into the bullpen eventually, like you mentioned with Adrian Hauser last year. Peter Strzelecki also made a couple starts, I believe, last year. He's still in the system. So, yeah, it's a lot of these guys. And I think that at the end of the day, we're talking about the ability to both be in a position to throw or headline a trade with some of these guys, depending on which guys we're talking about. Or, we saw the amount of injuries that happened last year. The Brewers starting rotation got decimated. I think that every pitcher in our rotation went on the disabled list at some point last year. So certainly that depth is going to be useful.
Absolutely. Also, another move made by the Brewers this past week. We did trade right-handed pitching reliever who was injured for most of last year, and Justin Topa. We traded him mostly just to clear up, I think, a 40-man roster spot for the signing of Miley, and also just give him another fresh perspective, a new start somewhere else, to the Seattle Mariners for a right-handed pitching reliever prospect named Joseph Hernandez, who's 22 years old.
Did you get a scouting report from Scotty's interns on a return in that trade from Seattle?
Yeah. Unfortunately, he doesn't have very high of a ceiling, and he does have a kind of a unique delivery where he's almost like a drop down 3/4 slot delivery on his pitches, but is kind of deceptive, and he has some nice movement on his pitches. Unfortunately, just like most young relievers, that he struggled with the control. In fact, through a couple of minor league seasons, I think he averaged walking over four batters per 9 innings. However, his strikeout rate was over 10 batters per 9 innings. So again, he's got some nice stuff, but doesn't necessarily know where it's going. But either of the batters. So obviously he's kind of a project, so to speak.
Yeah. So. The Ryan Duran, Randy Johnson model of minor league pitching. I will say this about guys that come out of the Dominican Republic or come out of Venezuela. I think that sometimes we don't always know their ceiling as well as we can with American players, just because we haven't seen them perform in, college or in even in some cases organized high school ball. So that raw talent is there. Sometimes you can mold that, I think, in different ways with guys from overseas than American players.
Well, I never thought I'd use the Brewers pitching machine term ever in my life, but really the Brewers over the last 5+ years have done a great job of really developing pitching, unlike the previous 45 so years where the organization was not so great at doing. And so it's one of those things, if you get them in the system and, you can teach them a little bit more control or command of their pitchers, or even possibly just focus on this young player, what your best pitch is, and maybe throw that more heavily. Or, a lot of times these guys are trying to be starters still and are, throwing pitchers that aren't necessarily quality still throughout the minor leagues, and that's why their numbers aren't the greatest. So again, some of these things they need a change of scenery, and if they get a new coach or a new team, a new perspective, these guys can take off, and you see it all the time. So it's tough to tell. So anyone with like a raw arm like Hernandez has, you always love adding to your system because you just never know. Obviously, to make the major leagues, it's so competitive, and there's a lot of guys. They're drafted in many rounds and coming out of college and high schools all over whatnot. And then you got guys coming from overseas. You've got guys coming from from the Dominican and Latin American countries and stuff like that. So really, just it's so difficult to actually make the majors even in a bullpen role. But you'd love to see those really fresh arms coming in, young ones, because for every 9 guys that flame out don't make the majors, 1 out of every 10 or so, or maybe less than that, but you might get like a Freddie Peralta type as a lottery ticket. So you never just know. So I think it's a good move. And also just, there wasn't any more room on the team probably for Topa. And I think he still will be a valuable piece for the Mariners bullpen.
Yeah,
So you wish him the best.
Oddly enough, sorry, Greg.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, oddly enough, both of those guys actually have very plus sliders. It was kind of interesting looking through kind of the repertoires of both guys that they profile a little similarly, just looking at it with Topa being an older player.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, I'm not sure if the Brewers 2023 bullpen is settled at this point. I'd still love for them to bring in someone like a Matt Moore. I know we mentioned him a couple of times, which means, since I've mentioned him, means the Brewers will definitely not sign him. So someone like that, a veteran arm for our bullpen. I think that we're, obviously the confounding choice not to bring back Brad Boxberger. I think we really needed to, sign someone to fill a similar role that he filled for us the last year. I think he was really underrated as far as a key piece to our bullpen last year, and to lose him on top of losing Hader and not really have suitable replacements, I think would be a huge mistake. So.
Well, we've also, I know he was not good for us, but we also lost Rogers, the player that we acquired for Hader, departed as a free agent to the San Francisco Giants in the last couple of weeks as well. I don't know that we've discussed it on our podcast, but that's just another arm that's gone from our back end of our bullpen, along with Boxberger and several others as well. We lost Trevor Gott, signed with the Mariners in the last couple of weeks. I mean, there's been quite a few names that we've seen depart.
Oh yeah, and as far as bringing back the team from 5 years ago, I should also mention that Alex Claudia was signed to a minor league contract by the Brewers within the last week. So again, not terribly exciting. I'm not sure these guys are not anywhere near. No offense to Alex, but I mean the quality of even Taylor Rogers, who actually just got a 3-year contract with the Giants. And I mean, for a reliever with the attrition rates, that's a pretty nice contract for him to land. And I think he's really highly valued still throughout the league. And I don't think the Brewers will trade Hader without getting a quality arm like Rogers, a quality lefty with closer experience back in that deal. Really, because I think that they weren't really giving up on contending in 2022 when they made the Hader deal. At least they thought they weren't, but I think fans saw it differently because obviously Taylor Rogers was still a pretty big step down from Josh Hader, as we saw, and pretty much any left-handed reliever would be at this point in their careers. But so I don't know. I still feel like the Brewers aren't done. I don't know what holes we need to fill outside of like strengthening our bullpen. And I still think we need to bring in another quality bat or two, whether that's via free agency or trade. I just don't know. Looking at who's left out there in free agency, it's not terribly awe-inspiring at this point, but you never know. I mean, even someone like, and again, bringing back former Brewers is not the top of my list, but I mean, like someone like Nelson Cruz is completely unsigned. I mean, you can't argue that his bat would be valuable to be on the roster, but at this point, I just don't know. I'd rather us, package, put together a package of 2 to 4 prospects or whatever it would take to actually land a young, decent bat with some team control from another team. But whether or not that's something that's possible right now this offseason, I just don't know. But it just doesn't seem like, I don't know, I'm not terribly impressed with the overall offseason this so far. With the
same.
team.
Same here. It's been pretty depressing, as we talked about at length on our last episode. And I know a lot of fans are saying, well, we need to give the team a little bit more time and the front office a little bit more time, and fine, that's all well and good. But we are coming up on spring training. I know that it seems hard to believe. Opening day is actually just 80 days away from today as we tape this.
That's good to know, because I've been staring out the window waiting for it to come back here for about a couple of months.
Yeah.
So that's good. I love the countdown. So obviously we're sitting here, I think it's January 9th when we're doing this podcast. And so you're talking about just over 30 days and we're going to have the two of my favorite words in the English language, and that's pitchers and catchers. And they'll be reporting to Florida and Arizona spring training here in just over a month. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Definitely.
Yeah,
but with that being said, I really just feel like this roster construction for the season, it still has to, I would like to see some more moves that are significant here in the next month before the start of spring training, before camp breaks. And it's tough to see who's out there that could help our team still, but hopefully Matt Arnold is really doing due diligence and not leaving some head-turning trades out of the equation. I really just think the Brewers are in need of something major, and not just these little, Wade Miley type signings. No offense to the guy, but I mean, these are not needle movers, in my opinion, so to speak.
Yeah, I totally agree, Craig. And for what it's worth, we have heard from our anonymous source, Tom Carter, who also says that the Brewers are still working diligently to try to make some moves happen, most likely via trade, though, instead of free agency at this point. But that is the news from our anonymous source, Tom Carter.
Yeah, no, and a couple things. I guess Tom Carter said that if you could please just call him TC and not use his full name, he would like to stay employed or whatnot. And also, Scott's said that you could, we want to, this week, her name's Diamond, I think. And she works in Las Vegas with Scott. She said we could use her name on air or whatever, but whatever. Scott's intern's fine.
Okay.
It's all good.
Yep.
So yes, really excited for baseball to come back here soon. I know the NFL season is kind of coming to a close, and most Wisconsin sports fans can focus on the best sport in the world, and that's baseball, and kind of forget about all that other stuff. Kind of just white noise, so to speak, during the off season. So
Absolutely.
Really looking forward to 2023 season, and I know you're going to have an opportunity to go out to Arizona for sure for spring training. I know the World Baseball Classic's coming up too. What are your thoughts on Arizona for spring training and your trip, and just overall, do you have any excitement for the World Baseball Classic coming up?
Yeah, I can't wait for it. Actually, I know that it's something that I've loved since it started in 2006, which I think is the year that we went to spring training on that epic trip, Craig, although we didn't see any WBC games that year. But I think the Team USA is putting together a really strong roster. I was an avid supporter of Team USA in 2017 when the likes of Adam Jones and Christian Yelich and Marcus Stroman were on that squad, and really excited to see the team again this year. I think that it's going to be even stronger. Some of the names that have been thrown out there are going to be really fun to watch play on the same team for a week or two. And that bracket, though, it's tough. I mean, Team Dominican Republic is always good. Team Japan is a different bracket, but that they're going to be competitive in the Asian bracket. I think that it's going to be exciting. I think that the U.S. plays against the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and the UK made the cut, as well as Mexico and Colombia. I think is who's in the U.S.'s bracket this year. So yeah, it should be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not able to go to actual World Baseball Classic game, which I know some are happening in Arizona, I think that they actually have some preliminary matchups and against some of the major league teams actually during spring training in Arizona and Florida. So maybe you could check some of those out. But yeah, it should be exciting. I love spring training and all that stuff. So that, yeah, February, March are some of my favorite months of the year. Not necessarily because of the snow. I'm still shoveling here in Wisconsin, but more so for those the spring trainings is just hope springs eternal for sure every year. And I know last year the Brewers missed the playoffs for the first time after making it 4 straight years. And I really feel that the Brewers have quality talent to get back into the playoffs again this year. And I think just adding to the roster here going forward and be willing to trade from our farm system to strengthen the major league roster. I think that that's where we should be at in our franchise's current build, so to speak. I know that it feels almost like we're willing to do a little bit of a minor retooling, rebuilding here and seeing what we have with some of our young outfielders like Garrett Mitchell. But I think the Brewers really need to be flexible and willing to, act like contenders, because I really feel that we're the best team in the NL Central going into the season. And so hopefully we can build upon that.
That's the idea. I know it's been kind of a rough offseason. I think it just goes back to last year when so many fans and it seems like guys in the clubhouse got deflated after the Hader trade. I do think that this team is still talented. I think that we could be more aggressive in pursuing a bat or two to supplement an updating pitching staff. So that's what I'm hopeful is going to happen here in the next, 3-4 weeks before spring training starts. If it takes up until opening day, that's fine, but is what it is.
Yeah. And I think the Brewers will be much improved just by having a full year of health, hopefully, knock on wood, from the likes of like Freddie Peralta. I think having him make 25, 30 starts in the rotation would be huge for this team. So again, we'll just hope for the best, hope for good health this coming into 2023. And I feel that hopefully there'll be some more moves coming up this month. And hopefully, as far as our listeners are concerned, hopefully we'll be able to bring you guys some interviews. Vince and I maybe will look to conduct with some former Brewers.
Yep.
So hopefully that we can bring that to you here within the next month or so as we fill out the off season and look forward to the 2023 MLB season. So thanks again for listening and tuning in.
Sounds great, Craig, and thanks, Scotty and Chad. And remember to keep sending us your questions, Brew Crew Review Podcast with an s@gmail.com as well. Always great talking baseball with you, Craig. Happy New Year.
You as well. Happy New Year, Vince. And stay classy, Wisconsin, and go Brewers.
Go Brewers, guys.